Today, we'll be covering a fascinating topic. But before we do that, how would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. Let's get into the video. Why would a people leave their centuries-old pantheon to conform to a foreign monotheistic tradition? Before Christianity reached Europe, the Scandinavian people of that region, people whom we now call Vikings, had their own sacred stories and practices. Scholars say they did not share one carefully threshed-out canon of agreed religious texts. Instead, the stories passed from teller to teller and were different in different regions and times. The gods celebrated in those stories were also many and varied from each other. Sometimes their deeds and words were high and solemn, full of noble self-sacrifice. Sometimes they were mischievous or short-sighted. In this, perhaps they were like the people who listened to the stories, who laughed and wept and remembered. The stories linger in our culture today. 4 days of our week are named after members of the Norse pantheon. Tyr for Tuesday, Odin or Woden for Wednesday, Thor for Thursday, and Frigg for Friday. Wagner's Ring cycle has kept one version of a great Norse story alive in the minds of music lovers. Readers of modern fantasy will also find many echoes of the Norse tales. Neil Gaiman, Douglas Adams, and others have explicitly taken some of the Norse gods and put them into a modern setting with strange, sad, and humorous results. Echoes of Norse tales and creatures abound in the speculative fiction of Ursula K. Le Guin, J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, Tad Williams, and others. Something in these old and puzzling stories still has the power to move and unsettle us and inspire new acts of creation. So why did they abandon such rich traditions and oral stories? The British historian Richard Fletcher put it best. We may be confident that the conversion of Scandinavia was gradual, piecemeal, muddled, and undisciplined. In short, there is no easy answer. The rise of Christianity influenced the Norsemen and their need to expand their territories. For centuries, the Scandinavians have traded throughout Europe, but as the European nations converted to Christianity, they became less and less inclined to deal with pagans. This decline in trade, and therefore wealth, may have led the Vikings to resolve the situation through raids. The fact that the Vikings were not Christian also meant that they had no qualms about attacking wealthy religious institutions in Europe. Churches and monasteries were not well protected because Christians did not think of attacking their own religious houses, and the Vikings would have seen them as soft targets. Small Christian populations lived in Scandinavian coastal towns, so the Vikings had been exposed to Christianity, but they did not care about it. Nevertheless, it is impossible to live in proximity to novel ideas without being influenced, so the Norsemen had incorporated some Christian ideas into their beliefs. As Christianity made its way from the southwest to the north, it quickly made an impression in Denmark. Missionaries from Western Europe began arriving in Scandinavian lands in the 9th and 10th centuries. The Hamburg-Bremen mission was particularly significant. Among these early missionaries was Saint Ansgar, a German monk who later became the Archbishop of Bremen. Germany's religious connection with Scandinavia would become prominent again after the Lutheran Reformation. According to Snorri Sturluson's medieval classic, Heimskringla, the Danish king Harald Bluetooth converted to Christianity in the late 10th century, although it is possible he was baptized earlier, as interpretations of the events differ. According to some sources, Harald accepted the Christian faith upon witnessing one of Otto I's priests perform a miracle. However, Snorri Sturluson says he converted during the reign of Otto II. Nevertheless, once he and his army were baptized, they headed north to convert their fellow Scandinavians. Harald converted Håkon the Jarl of Norway, and later went to war with him once he reverted to Norse paganism. Many believe that Harald accepted Christianity purely for political purposes. Otto II had threatened to bring Germans, Poles, and Franks to raise his cities, and by converting, Harald averted a potential war. Harald Bluetooth Gormson is remembered for bringing Danish tribes together and introducing national coinage in Denmark. And yes, the modern Bluetooth technology is named after him. Widukind of Corvey, a medieval historian and Saxon Benedictine monk, wrote, "The Danes had long been Christians, but they nevertheless worshipped idols with pagan rituals." Since the Danes had several deities, they had no trouble including another. Paganism and Christianity coexisted for quite some time. Archaeologists have found many Christian artifacts from the pre-Christian era of the Vikings. However, until the 11th century, the Danes did not uphold an essential aspect of Christianity, monotheism. Between the missionary work and the raids in Christian lands, the Vikings, who were pantheistic, polytheist, and animist, were routinely coming into contact with new beliefs. An interesting point to note is that the Vikings also raided Muslim regions. They encountered Islamic traditions by attacking different areas in Central Asia and Abbasid-controlled locations. Archaeologists have found Norse clothes with Islamic embroideries, such as the words Allah and Ali. The Norse people got used to monotheistic ideas after frequent encounters with Muslims and Christians. As time passed, many Vikings brought slaves and wives back to the north, bringing a substantial influx of Christian ideas into their fold in the process. On the other hand, Viking traders began to suffer losses because Christian traders and countries began discriminating against Muslims and pagans. To solve this problem and continue trading in Europe, many Viking traders merely adopted the signs of Christianity outwardly to protect their business interests. They would wear a cross when trading with Christians, but replace it with Thor's hammer when they returned to their homes. They were familiar with Christianity at this point and could navigate the socio-economic circles fluently. Once Christianity had begun to make headway in the north, especially after its impact on Danish lands, other emperors followed suit. King Olaf likely converted to Christianity during his campaign in Britain around 994. When he returned to his homeland, he brought his new faith with him and became Norway's first Christian king. A wave of Christianity followed in his wake. As Norway's first Christian king, Olaf brutally converted the predominantly pagan population to Christianity. Pagan temples were destroyed and churches were built in their place. Those who refused to convert were killed, tortured, maimed, or banished. Snorri Sturluson's epic sagas covered these events in the following words. King Olav went with his army to North Moor and baptized that folk. After this, he sailed into Lade and had the temple broken down and took all the goods and ornaments from the temple and God. And from the temple door he took a great gold ring which Håkon the Jarl had caused to be made. Then King Olaf had the temple burned down. After bringing Christianity to Norway, King Olaf was determined to spread his new religion's beliefs to the outlying colonies of Iceland and Greenland. He sent missionaries to Iceland, but they met with limited success. He resorted to aggressive tactics, but by the time the Icelanders adopted Christianity, the Greenlanders had already left the island. Conversion in Greenland was a more gradual and voluntary process. An opportunity presented itself to King Olaf when Leif Erikson, explorer and son of Eric the Red, visited Norway around 1000. Before Leif made his voyage to Norway, he, like the rest of his family and most of the other settlers, worshipped pagan gods. When Leif arrived in Norway, he was welcomed into the court of King Olaf, and it appears that the king took quite a shine to the young Greenlander. The time Leif spent with King Olaf was to have a lasting influence, not only on Leif, but also on the settlement of Greenland, as it was during his visit to Norway that Leif converted to Christianity. In Leif, King Olaf had found a young man who was held in high esteem in Greenland, and who was able to influence and convert the Greenlanders to Christian faith. Before Leif and his crew returned to Greenland, they all converted and were baptized. King Olaf then gave Leif the task of spreading the faith to Greenland. According to the saga of Eric the Red, he even sent a priest back to Greenland with Leif. Sweden was the last region to adopt Christianity in mainland Scandinavia. The aforementioned missions from German lands, led by Ansgar, arrived in Sweden in the mid-9th century. Over the next couple of centuries, missionary work came to no avail. In the 10th century, the church had made some inroads into the Swedish territory of Västergötland, but it was not until the 11th century that Christianity emerged as a popular choice. Olaf Skotkonung was the first Christian king of Sweden. However, unlike his Norwegian counterparts, he was not adamant about adopting his beliefs throughout the Swedish lands. Even though he did not insist on forced conversions during his reign, his popularity and influence helped spread Christianity. He is responsible for establishing the Episcopal See in Västergötland. Like in other Scandinavian regions, Christianity and paganism coexisted for many years, each incorporating elements of the other. However, over time, the Norse myths and legends took a back seat to the Christian ideas. By the 12th century, Sweden was predominantly Christian, as was the rest of Scandinavia. Christianity had spread throughout the north, penetrating Finland and the Faroe Islands as well. Until the rise of Christianity, most Vikings believed in and worshipped Norse gods and deities. Some of the symbols they used to represent their gods and beliefs can be found carved on runestones, swords, axes, and other items that have survived from the Viking Age. One such powerful symbol that many Vikings displayed was Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. Carvings of Mjolnir can be found on weapons, boats, and Viking jewelry. Many Viking warriors wore a metal medallion of Thor's hammer as a necklace, similar to how a Christian would wear a cross. Since the Vikings were accustomed to worshipping many gods, they readily accepted the Christian god alongside their own. And in countries where they settled, like Normandy, Ireland, and throughout the British Isles, they quickly adopted Christianity. The exact reasons for this are unknown, but as mentioned earlier, trade played a role in the Viking conversions, as Christians were not really supposed to trade with pagans. The full conversion was probably not demanded of all Scandinavian traders, but the custom of prim signing, or first signing, was introduced for those who dared. This approach was a halfway step, falling short of baptism, indicating some willingness to accept Christianity, and was often deemed enough to allow trading. It also appears to have been due to political expediency for the Vikings to convert to form alliances or sign peace treaties. An example of this is the Treaty of Wedmore, signed in 878. The treaty bound the Viking leader Guthrum to accept Christianity, with Alfred of Wessex offering peace in return. Alfred also recognized Guthrum as the ruler of East Anglia. Whatever the Vikings' reasons for converting at the time, the result was that by the end of the Viking Age, most of Scandinavia had converted to Christianity, and the Norse pagan religions have been relegated to the realm of myths and legends. To learn more about Norse mythology, check out our book, Norse Mythology, a captivating guide to Norse folklore, including fairy tales, legends, sagas, and myths of the Norse gods and heroes. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free Mythology Bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.